When I was a kid, about 10 years old, I hung out with three individuals religiously. We were best friends and we did everything together. Our parents were much of the same, whereas we got to do whatever we wanted. There was no restrictions for anything. Grades didn't matter. We never had to check in. With that kind of structure, we quickly became a menace to society and started racking up misdemeanors hand over fist. What I didn't realize at the time was how close I was and the path I was on to be introduced into the destructive U.S. prison system. Prisons need reform. They're they're spending way too much money annually. They're overpopulated. We need reforms that have already been successful with other countries, such as Norway and Sweden. We need to take some of their success and implement them into our own prison systems. The impact will be directly to individuals or to state spending budgets. Did you know that prisons spend $71 billion a year on prisons? So to break that down a little bit, a study by www.loa.ca.gov it was a study of a California prison from 2016 to 17. And the study found that $71,000 is spent annually just on one inmate a year. So this is for guard costs, heat, air conditioning, food, clothing to house one inmate. It's so bad that the spending rate is increasing faster than the education rate. In fact, the prison spending is beginning to overshadow the spending of education in some states. 18 states are now spending more on prisons than they are on our education system. This is in part by the overpopulation of prisons. The U.S. has the second highest incarceration rate in the world at 707 people per 100,000. 63% of the prison population consist of nonviolent crimes. In fact, there are a lot of money is spent on people awaiting trial even of nonviolent crimes. Every year it was noted that 480,000 people sit in prison waiting for trial for nonviolent crimes such as minor drug charges, property charges, or traffic violations or charges. So I had just turned 18. Me and one of the three others had signed contracts to join the military. We had also signed for our court date for our first felony charge. So with the misdemeanors and those felony charges, we were facing a third strike kind of deal. And we were able to get a deal with the judge where we send in our proof of service letter within 6 months, and she would postpone the hearing date for that. And then she said that we would become the military's problem. What I didn't realize at the time was our lives had just been saved. But I couldn't say that about the other two individuals. Other countries are already have great success with prison reform, such as Norway and Sweden. Norway's prison population rate is 75 versus the U.S. 707 per 100,000 people. They hold the lowest recidivism rate at 20% versus the U.S.'s 76.6%. Sweden also had great success with prison reform, and one of the things they're known for is an open prison system. This is where it's more of a dormitory for prisoners. They have to be there at a certain time. They have access to kitchens, their own room, and they are able to create trends and habits that they didn't know otherwise existed. So I had contacted the other two friends for the first time in 8 years. Well, one of them, the other one was in prison at the time. And the other one had just gotten out, and he explained to me how detrimental the prison system was and the people he met and how he came out much worse than had he went in. And he had a record and he couldn't get a job, and through connections he met in prison, he was now slinging drugs to make ends meet. And I didn't know at the time that was the last time that I would ever talk to him or the other person, never again. We need reform. And some of the suggestions for those are less severe sentencing and a chance for inmates of nonviolent crimes and minor drug charges to have a clear record and start over. We need to really rehabilitate, not punish. And to do that, we start with education classes. A study has shown that inmates who take education classes show a less than 40% recidivism rate than inmates that don't. We need to mandate counseling. A lot of times these prisoners are illiterate and they come in with learning disabilities and trends and habits that is all that they've ever known that they continually revert to. We need to teach them learning improvements to change those habits and trends, and teach them other ways that they can go about doing things that are more appropriate and successful. We need to teach them communication skills so that they can learn to express themselves and steer clear of the violent ways of communicating that keep getting them into the prison. And then coping skills. A study was conducted by Aaron Beck back in the 50s and 60s where he had taken the most harsh criminals in the U.S. and taught them coping skills, and they were extremely successful with that. We also need open prisons. This will allow, for the first time, inmates to know what it's like to have a life of normal trends, to take care of themselves, and to create habits of ways that they otherwise never would have experienced. The impact would be to all of you individually or to the state spending bills. And more money would be able to be spent towards education versus the prison system. So I want you to think of those little individuals, of me and my friends, because those people could be people you know, or maybe your children in the future. Because statistically, 626,000 people are incarcerated every year. So it's safe to say that some of the people even listening to this video will have known or have children that are inducted into the prison system. My two friends, one ended up dying of a heroin overdose and the other one spending the rest of his life in prison. So the hero in this story is the audience, where the next time you see a bill on a voting ballot for prison reform, the change starts with you. Let's make that change. So in conclusion, prisons need reform. We spend too much money. They're overpopulated. Other countries have already had success with prison reform. The impact will be to you directly as individuals by preventing people you know from going to prison, and state spending budgets.